In Print Radio. In Print is a professional writers organization based in Rockford, Illinois. We're dedicated to providing resources and education off the page and on the air. Hello, I'm Bob Francis. Today, In Print member Richard Pulfer is sitting down with humorist Bull Garlington.
Thanks for joining us, Bill. Bull, thanks for...
It's Bull.
It's Bull. Thanks for joining us, Bull.
People actually read my email, which has my name at the bottom. They still call me Bill.
Bill? I guess there's only one letter off.
Well, it's a southern-northern thing. You know, in the South, everyone's like, yeah, Bull. Sure. I know 3 people named Bull.
Yeah.
Yeah, but up north, they're like, your name is what again? And I'm like, it's Bull. Deal with it. So Bull. That's a great way to start the interview. But
I think that's the best.
Clearly pissed off about my name. So.
Yeah. I've clearly put you on the defensive.
Yeah. So the rest of this interview is going to suck, man. It is. One-word answers to everything. Go ahead, ask me anything.
How are you doing?
It makes for great radio, right?
Yeah.
So it was great to be here today, and I love your radio show. So
this might be easy for you to answer, but how do you know you're funny enough to make a living at it? Because I think a lot of people think they're funny, or maybe they just think they're funny looking. But how do you know you're funny enough to be a humor writer? When you make your kids laugh. If you make your kids laugh, then you're pretty okay. If your wife consistently really laughs at you, not just but you really make her laugh, then you're pretty good because she's heard it several times, whatever it is you're saying. And also she thinks you're an idiot. And she's probably right. And if you make her laugh, then I think you're okay. If you make your jaded video game infused children laugh, then I think you're okay. So you quickly have to learn to distinguish between the real laughs and the courtesy laughs? Oh
yeah, courtesy laughs don't ever count ever.
Okay.
Yeah, so unless no one's laughing, then a courtesy count really matters a lot. So, which I think is why it's called a courtesy laugh, I guess. But to be honest, I don't know. Most of the time I think I'm just being an asshole. And it turns out people are laughing. And I'm like, I could think with a name a minute ago. Frankly, I was being an but you laughed. So I get to count that as humor.
Yeah.
So, but hell, I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know how it works. I don't know how humor works, man.
Yeah, I don't think anyone does.
But I do it, but I honestly, for the love of God, could not tell you. First of all, I can't tell a joke, ever. I cannot tell a joke. I just somehow am able to make people laugh, I should have been a stand-up comic, but I think that boat has sailed.
Yeah. Well, if you can't.
What do you mean, yeah? Why'd you agree so fast?
No.
Are you saying I'm not funny?
I'm going to say.
Yeah, you started off with my name all wrong, and now you're saying I'm not even funny?
I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
This is way more fun. I don't know. How do you know when somebody's funny?
I guess if they make you laugh a lot, I guess I just figure people set such a high bar, and I'm not that funny. Like they maybe look at stand-up comics and say, well, I'm not Jerry Seinfeld. Yeah, I'm not.
Well, he's not funny.
Well, maybe that's it.
I mean, you laugh at Jerry Seinfeld because you're supposed to laugh at Jerry Seinfeld, but a lot of the time he's not that funny. He's just making an observation that it's more like, and so you laugh, because laughter is an expression of discomfort most of the time. And Seinfeld's one of those guys who found that, and he figured out kind of a formula for writing jokes that land in that weird discomfort zone, and you laugh a lot of the time because no one's ever made you have to figure that out before. Like his stupid joke about, what's the deal with peanuts on airplanes? Well, that's not funny, but no one had ever said that before. No one ever thought about the fact that what a stupid thing. We all get in a big tube and then they feed us peanuts. That's weird. And so you laugh at it because that's the only logical reaction, A lot of times I think I make people laugh because I say stuff that is completely inappropriate at a very inappropriate time in a very inappropriate setting, and I'm just willing to say it. And I think a lot of the laughter comes from they can't believe I just said that, And then a lot of times I think that it's what Bill Cosby said, which is you're just telling the truth with a good story. Everything in my book is absolutely, nothing's exaggerated. It's all true. It's just the way I say it. Another person could tell a story about finding their daughter's thong in the laundry, and at first thinking it's their wife's and having the reactions you would have if you found your wife's leather thong that you didn't know was there. And then as you're going, and then it dawns on you, that would never fit her. And then you go, oh my God. and you're just completely sickened and insanely, you want to throw up for the rest of your life. Somebody could tell that story and it would be boring. I'm just very fortunate that I'm not good at anything else. So if I tell that story, it's usually kind of funny. Plus, I'm willing to tell that story. And I think a lot of people, I'm sure other fathers have been digging through the laundry and pulled out their daughter's sexy underwear when she turned 19 and didn't know at first that it was her daughter's sexy underwear and have the same response I did. They're not telling anybody. In fact, they're probably in therapy.
And I suppose that line between the discomfort and the awkward makes for a rich mining for your, death by children, yeah.
Yeah, awkward is always a good place to start. When people are in an awkward situation, they're off balance. And when people are off balance, you can just push them further off balance. And laughter is the vocal representation of the guy in the cartoon waving his arm to get back in balance. Laughter is emotional balancing.
Yeah, I guess we've never really thought why do we laugh? Like, what makes funny?
Terror.
Terror
Makes things funny.
Now, how did you come to the point where you decided I'm going to actually write humor about my children in a column? How did that actually take shape?
My wife and I, back in 2000, we both realized we did math. She's smart; she could do that. And we realized we would never make enough money in our regular jobs because she had topped out and I'd kind of topped out. I was a retail manager at Barnes & Noble. I probably wasn't going to go any higher than that. Even if I did, the money wasn't that much better. And we said, we'll never be able to pay for their college. They were tiny little idiots at the time. And she was like, we have to get second careers. And I'm like, well, cool. I'm in retail. So just either I could go anywhere or I have nothing. And she goes, well, you've always been a writer. Why don't you become a writer? And I was like, all right. And working at a bookstore like Barnes & Noble is kind of like working at the best library in the world. Like every book is brand new and you can take them home. People don't know this, but if you work at Barnes & Noble, you can take home books. So technically, a lot of the books you buy at Barnes & Noble are used. And so I thought, cool, I am going to use it like a university. And so I taught myself the business of commercial writing. Not writing commercials, but writing for businesses. Because I thought I knew that there's money in that. I know that businesses pay on a 30-day cycle. I know you can get paid. And I know that I could write stuff, real estate copy. I could do that, And so I did that. My wife asked a bunch of her mentors. She was an environmental scientist. And she said, where should I go? And you should go into law. And she did. Guess who makes more money?
I'm guessing lawyers make more money than
wow. Yeah. Yeah, it's embarrassing. And so skip forward several years, and I've been I'm ready to put my business together, and I know how to look for clients and everything, and I'm really going for it. My wife says, halfway through that, I had to quit my job because she got hired by a law firm, and the next day they sent her to Germany. And I was like, yeah, but the kids. And she was like, I don't know, goodbye. And so I started showing up at work like an hour late, and I had to leave like at 2:30. And they were like, that's really not what we hired you for. And I was like, okay, bye. And so I became a stay-at-home dad. Terrible, terrible career decision. I am a terrible father. I am a terrible housekeeper. I am great at watching cartoons and playing video games, which is mostly what I did. So anyway, I'm way off topic now. I'm still trying to write, but my wife sits down. She goes, you know what? You've worked so hard. She took a year off from work, and so I was the only breadwinner for that year, which is terrifying because my salary is like, she said, while I've been doing this, I've been gone all the time. She did this while she's working full time. So my wife was gone 90 hours a week, and I was stuck with the kids, And she goes, I know you're wanting to become a commercial writer, but I would rather you write whatever you want. She goes, just promise me you won't stop. I'm like, yeah, sure. I'm like, that's crazy. You're a nutbag. I said, you realize that I'm never going to make any money at this. You know that, right? She goes, yeah, I know. She goes, but you might. I can't turn that down, So I started writing articles, and I had written articles for magazines before, and I tried to write what they wanted, real serious features, well-researched stuff, and I got nowhere. I'd send out queries that I worked so hard on, and I got back nothing. I got emails saying, nope. And it was really disheartening. And one day, I wish I still had this thing. I went and bought from a media company the names of every editor in the Midwest. It cost me $280. Every editor in the Midwest.
I've seen those. I think I may have one.
Yeah. I wrote a query. I wrote 5 articles. It took me 20 minutes each, 5 of them were all centered on lemonade stands, like, how to use a lemonade stand to teach your kid business and how to make the world's greatest lemonade and the story of me finding out how to make the greatest lemonade and some other crap. They were all totally humorous, no research whatsoever. I made it up on the spot. And then a couple of other stories. They're all summer things. It was like February, so I'm selling ahead to summer. They were ridiculous. And my query letter was, look, I spent like 10 minutes on these. They're kind of funny. They're good for summer. If you want it, send me $30. If you don't, I don't give a shit. That was my query letter. And I sent it out to 200 editors. I had never gotten, like, my ROI, my rate of response was 0 for everything else I'd sent out. Like, no one, like, I never got any, I never sold anything. And on this one, 14 people wrote me back. And they're like, "That's really, I can't use it, but that's the funniest stuff I've ever read." And they're like, "Your query letter was great." 2 people bought it, and one of them was Chicago Parent. And the story they bought was called the 24th Century Chore Chart, where I took the old chore chart, plow the field, I changed that to take care of my plants in Farmville, and I updated it. And it was ridiculous. It was idiotic. But turns out there's a market for idiocy. And so that's how I got into the humor thing. And Chicago Parent printed that story for a measly $30. And she said, I've been looking for a humor writer. And I'm like, really? I'm like, I can do that. And that's how it happened, man. And then I just started writing it. It was stuff I'd already been doing on my blog. I had a blog called Death by Children where I was writing down all the stories I've been telling to people, like at Scouts, and making people laugh, and I was like, I should do a blog. And I did.
We'll be back with more of Richard's interview with Bull right after this. Welcome back to Imprint Radio. I'm Bob Francis. Imprint member Richard Pulfer is talking with humorist Bull Garlington.
How did this lead Chicago Guide to the Chicago Bee Cops Guide to Good Eats? Like, how did that come about in
we were almost simultaneous. My friend Dave and I were doing a radio show on WJJG. And one day we had an author on, and the publisher turned to us and said, "Hey, you guys want to write this book?" And it was, she had done the Street Sandman's Guide to Chicago Eats, which I had sold hand over fist as a manager at Barnes & Noble. And I knew how popular it was. And I was like, yeah, we'll do that. And so that's how we did it. And at the same time, I sent out that other stuff, and I got that hit back. So they happened almost at the same time.
Well, how did you stay productive, as a stay-at-home dad? I mean, was this around that time?
I wasn't. You can't. It's nuts. Kids are terrible. Kids ruin your life. They do. I used to be cool. I had a great car. I was going to travel. And then my wife was like, "Yeah, but let's have kids." I'm like, "Yeah, sure, whatever, sex, I'll do that." And then I didn't realize that you have to take care of them for the rest of your life. For the rest of your life, you have to take. I realized that my mom still takes care of me. And I'm like, oh, now I do that. Crap, what was I thinking? It's impossible to stay productive, especially when they're little, because they need you all the time, because they're dumb. And they're really inexperienced, and they don't know jack. They can't even get gravity right. They pee all over the place. It's like having a blind dog that's like near death. Like they shit and they piss all over the place. They're always hungry, and then they throw up after they eat. And they cry all the time, and they can't talk. It's terrible. And try writing in the middle of that. Forget it. You can't do it. I had to wait until they were a little bit older and they started going to school. And then I was like, whew, finally, I got a little time, Like my son would go to school for like 3 hours. And I'm like, okay, I can use that. I can do laundry and I can write. But eventually I was very disappointed in myself because I wasn't being as productive and successful as I had been in retail, which is just a terrible sentence now that I think about it. I hope no one else ever has to say that about themselves. But I was very motivated as a retail manager because I had a P&L sheet, and I lived by my P&L. I lived and breathed my P&L sheet. And my department, from the time I took it over until I left, was increasingly profitable every year. Like it never stopped getting profitable. Like I was always better than I was the year before. And I was really proud of that. And I used to lord it. I was like, "Hey, have you seen my P&L sheet today?" I kicked your ass out of the department. But I had a hard time as a writer, like matching that. Like, what do you do? I'm making $28 a year. So that part doesn't really motivate me. And I realized that I could make a P&L sheet that measured words instead of dollars. And so I started measuring my output, and I got really geeky about it. And like in a regular P&L sheet, you project your profit. And so, or you project your income. And so I started projecting how many words I was going to write per year, month, quarter, all that stuff. Suddenly I was incredibly motivated and incredibly productive. Once I was able to have a way to measure what I was doing and know where I was at every day, I was writing it, because it wasn't just to get the story on paper, because I'm a lazy mofo. Getting the story on paper, but having that metric to beat was a motive. I'm very competitive. That was a motivational thing. And so that's what kept me motivated.
And with all this productivity, I like the logic that goes from like your projects. I guess so simultaneously it was death by children and also where to eat, where's a good place for a cop to eat. Mm-hmm. And this leads to cookbooks by horror icon Vincent Price. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us a little bit about that project?
Yeah, it's a weird one. After a Beat Cup's Guide came out, I was like, I got to write another book, because I decided that was going to be my career. And so I decided I have a book out every 2 years. That's a good pattern, And I'm keeping up with that pattern pretty good right now. So I finished the Beat Cup's Guide, and me and Dave are out marketing it and doing talks and stuff like that. And I was like, well, what am I going to write next? And I had all these ideas. And my wife and I one day were in that movie, Julia versus Julia, which is a great movie. About somebody who cooked their way through a famous cookbook, a cookbook that was an icon of American culinary culture. Yeah. And my wife goes, "You should do that." And I said, "They're doing that now. We're in the movie. It's not only been done; they've made a movie. We're watching it. I think that I might be copying somebody." She goes, "Oh, you'll do it better. You'll be funny." And I'm like, yeah, that's not a bad idea. So that was my next project. Because I inherited this book, The Treasury of Great Recipes, by Vincent and Mary Price, published in 1965. It had been in my family my whole life. I grew up, I said this a few minutes ago in a talk, more than Edgar Rice Burroughs and more than the other writers that I read as a kid, this cookbook made me become a writer, because I would lay on the floor of our living room back when there were only 3 channels, and I would read that book, and I would flip through the pages, and it just freaked me out, because there's a whole world out there that I wasn't aware of. And I realized it wasn't just the food. There was a whole culture of elegance and highfalutenness that a kid growing up in rural Florida was totally missing out on. A big night for us is Fat Boy's Barbecue. Now, granted, it is really good barbecue, but it's just frickin' barbecue, all right? And even, if we really splurged, we would go to Red Lobster, which when I was a kid was like, wow. And now I'm like, oh, really? I didn't understand that the culinary world that Vincent Price was showing me in that book was a language, and that every meal they had was like a story, and as I got older, when my father passed away and I inherited that book, it was sitting in my kitchen, and my wife was like, well, I hadn't looked at it since, because it was, my dad had died, and it was kind of emotional. And so my wife goes, okay, do that. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good idea. So I started doing it. I'm like, well, what am I going to do? If I cook my way through this cookbook, I'm going to waste a lot of food, because my kids are not going to eat this shit. All right? It's like stuffed trout, truffle stuffed trout. Now, I think that's killer. My kids are going to be like, really? That fish has eyes. I'm not eating that. You sewed it up. I'm not going to eat that. That's Frankenfish. Give me a hamburger. And so I couldn't do that. Then I was going to cook meals and invite chefs over, and they could watch me try it and fail. I'm like, that'll be funny. And so finally I talked to this guy, ran this underground supper club called Clandestino. His name was Chef Efrain Cuevas. Wonderful guy, young guy. And I said, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing. I wonder if you could help me out. And he wrote back, I'm in. And so we set up a series of underground dinners. Some of them were in a abandoned convent in Pilsen. Some of them were in a loft, and one of them was in the Everly Burlesque Club. And then most recently we did one at the Keith House Mansion. And they said, this is not going to be a story unless you start out at the bottom. You can't just start out cooking for people. They're going to pay for food, and you're going to screw it up. You got to learn everything. I'm like, yeah, you're right. So I started out washing dishes. My boss is 13 years old. This kid named Willie Wagner. He's an heir to our heavenly barbecue restaurant. He's good. He was 13. He was good. Now he's even better. And so I washed dishes. Willie would yell at me and tell me to do stuff. And eventually I worked my way up to prep and all this stuff. And finally I did a meal. And I blogged about it all. I've since taken the blog down. The cool thing about it was that while I'm writing the book, I'm actually marketing the book. Because every dinner, I have all those people are now invested in it. I have their email and their addresses and everything because they have to pay me to go to the dinners. And then they tell everybody. There's a ton of people on Facebook love it and all this stuff. It's getting kind of popular. So when the book is finished, I have an audience that's already invested in the idea, and they're all going to buy it, you know? And I'm still working on it, right? I had to shelve it because Death by Children interrupted, and it was a done deal, and I didn't have to write anything. I just had to bundle everything together and then market it. And now I've got time again, and I'm doing the dinners again. So they're hyper elegant. We serve wine from the Vincent Price estate. It's $125 per person, though that's probably going to go up to about $140. It's a plated dinner by an incredibly talented chef. We have a mixologist who does weird drinks beforehand, and it's just an incredible evening.
Do they talk any more about Vincent Price? Or
at the last one, we actually had his daughter, Victoria Price, was there, and she gave a talk about Vincent Price. But it's really not about him. It's really about the food and about the book. It's a dinner about a book. It's a book about a dinner about a book. Is what it is really what we're doing. And I tell people, you're not here at a dinner, you're part of my writing.
Yeah.
You know?
So this would be your third book. 2 years after that, do you know where you'll be writing and what you'll be writing?
Actually, I'm probably going to double up next year because I'm also working on a book that's a travel memoir called Sleeping Through Britannia.
Okay.
Because I had a lifelong dream of traveling to Ireland. And so I planned this beautiful trip to Ireland where we rented a house on the Ring of Kerry with a car, and it was so killer. We'd just be able to stumble to pubs and the Blarney Stone and all this. My wife took one look at it and said, "Yeah." And she went and put us on a coach tour. You know what a coach is? It's a bus.
Yeah.
You know who takes bus tours? Old f***ers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so imagine, now, you know, have you ever been to England or Ireland or anything?
Yeah, just last year, actually.
Did you have the full English? Did you eat breakfast? Did you have the full English?
Yes, I had the full English.
All right, and what's the main ingredient? Beans. Every day for breakfast, they eat beans. And so here I am with a bunch of elderly people in a very warm, incredibly comfortable bus. We eat breakfast and we rush out and immediately get on the bus and we rock our way 3.5 hours to our next destination. That bus could have been a 3 megaton bomb by the time we got there. Everybody was farting. It was just like all the way across England. Well, besides the farting, I can't. I'm old. I can't stay awake all the time, you know. And you put me. I hate riding in a bus. You put me on a comfortable bus, like nice contoured seats after I just had a big breakfast, you know. And here's the other thing. What do you see all over the place in England? Sheep. Everywhere you go, there's sheep. And so here I am. I've had a full English. I'm on a truck with a bunch of elderly people who are farting their brains out, so I'm suffocating. All right. And I got a window that's got a bar here and a bar here, and it's like sheep, sheep, sheep. I'm literally counting sheep. I could not stay awake. I spent 10 days and $21,000 to nap through the UK. And then we get off the bus. What would I do? We'd go see something. I had to walk a lot, so I'm tired. And then I'd drink a big beer and get back on the bus. Fart, 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 fart. And sleep, 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 sleep. Then I get off the bus, have dinner in a nice restaurant, and then sleep. That's all I did.
So is this book more of a less of a travelogue and maybe more of a warning or a what not to do?
A little bit, yeah. It's like Death by Children in that what I write about principally, the core of my humor is failure, you know. And don't shake your head so fast. You should say, "Oh no, you're good." No, it is. It's failure. You know, I'm a failure as a father. In every situation with a child, I have failed, as has every other parent on earth. The difference is I write about it. Everyone else is like, "Here's how you should change a diaper." No one gives a shit about how to change a diaper. And no one really needs to be told. The third time you do it, you're an expert, okay? You don't need an article. But no one talks about, you know, sluice vomited onto in your face by your daughter and not being able to let go because you're afraid that she'll die if you drop her. So just taking it in the face because you have no choice. Who wrote about that? Nobody. I wrote about that. Well, same thing with travel. Everyone's like, here's 5 great things to do in, you know, Grasmere, all right, which is the town where William Wordsworth lived and where Beatrix Potter lived. I didn't write about that when I went there because who gives a shit about that? I wrote about the fact that place is so quaint that I quainted. I got like halfway through the village and I just kind of slumped down. I was like, "You need to take me to McDonald's. It's too authentic. I can't handle this, man. I was like shaking. I was like, if I see one more bunny, I'm going to explode. And my wife's like, come here. And she takes me into a tea shop, all right? And it's like the arch, it's like the blueprint in the mind of God for what a tea shop should be, which in America would be what would you find at Disney. Disney would they'd have a team of experts to create this, but it was just a tea shop. It's England, right? Their clotted cream came from next door. It's just England. And I was like, no, not this. And I blanked out, I overquainted, and I had
just wanted to get to a Starbucks.
I needed something American and authentic to bring me back, So I write about that kind of thing. And then, and then here I am at William Wordsworth's grave. I'm a writer. This is a moment, right? So I'm like, take my picture. And I'm trying to brood, all right? And I'm literally standing on his grave. And I'm like trying to get my brood on. But here's what people don't know is there's the cemetery and everything's 1,000 years old, like Romans here in this place. But next door is 100-year-old ginger snap factory. It looks like a Flintstone house. It's like in a big stone. Mrs. Somebody's ginger snaps. The entire cemetery and this town, not only is it over quaint, it smells like ginger everywhere you go. So I'm trying to, I've been on a bus for 4 hours. I'm starving to death, and I'm trying to get my brood on over Wordsworth grave, but I'm drooling because I want to ginger snaps so bad, and all I can think of is ginger snaps, and I'm like, this is not working, And I don't know, that was my trip, and that's the whole thing I got to talk about.
Stay tuned for more of Richard's interview with Bull right after this. We're back with Imprint member Richard Pulfer talking with humorist Bull Garlington here on Imprint Radio.
And then there was the Castle of the Velvet Penis, which is really one of the more amazing places in Scotland. And that's where they, freedom! That castle, that's actually, that's a Stirling Castle. I go into Stirling. I took my mom on this trip, my whole family and my mom. My mom's a reverend from Alabama. And she didn't say the S word until she was 50 years old. All right, she's proper. And so I take her there. Now, I'm not proper. She knows. She can handle me. It's okay. But we get to Stirling Castle. We get off. We go into the place. We go into the first room on the tour, all right? There's these guys. They're all in 14th century drag, and they have giant boner sacks, like huge, erect velvet penises as part of their costume. And I'm like, Mom, look at the ceiling. And I'm like, okay, I'm permanently 13, and my daughter was actually... She was 17 at the time, 17. And my son was, 13. So it's gigglicious right there. We were like, really? And I'm like, I took my mom 7,000 miles to shop for marital aids in Scotland, And so it turns out the king that from this period had preopsis or whatever it's called, and had a horrible, incredibly painful, raging boner all the time. And so he wore this huge thing over it because he still had to go to meetings and things. So all of his guards well, you got to do that. We got to do it, bro. We got your back. And so they all wore these giant nut sacks. Some of them actually had little purses in the top where they'd open them up, which has got to be the creepiest thing you've ever seen, right? It's like, no, I don't want your change. No tip from the tip, please. And they're all walking around with these, and I've got my mom. What am I going to do? And my wife, who cannot handle me making those jokes around my mom, and I'm like, Mom, look at the ceiling over here. Mom, look at the ceiling over here. Mom, isn't that ceiling fantastic? And by the way, the ceilings sucked ass. All right, they look like they were painted by neurotic 8-year-olds. They were horrible. I mean, authentic is one thing, but these were ugly. And so it took me forever to get out of the room of penises. So that's what I remember from Scotland. That's what I'm writing about.
Not anything about Scottish independence. Just
no, I don't give a shit about that.
Just
Scottish boner pendants.
Yeah,
what it was. They should have a sign, call it Game of Bones in there. Your tour guide's very happy to see you. That's what it should say.
That could be the title that could be the chapter's title.
Yeah, well, actually, I sold that one to Matador Network, and it actually printed under the title "Castle of the Velvet Penis."
You mentioned you're doubling up, so what would be the other project you'd be working?
The Eating Vincent Price book.
Oh, okay. Is between those two?
It's going to be like a book that you subscribe to.
Oh, cool.
So it's going to every 6 months it's going to grow, and there'll be new photos, because I always hire a professional photographer for the dinners, so there's beautiful pictures and new recipes and all this. So every 3 or 4 dinners, what I'll do is I'll add those things in, and then when you buy a ticket, you get a copy of the book, but anybody could buy it off the website.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to sell it for a couple of bucks.
Yeah, and with how much they're paying for the ticket, I'm figuring the book is probably figured into the cost.
Well, yeah, absolutely, yeah. You figure everything into the cost. Otherwise, you go broke. It's not easy to throw together a big dinner like that. I don't really make that much money on them. I mean, I do make a little money on them. But the truth is, dinners like that are very expensive. I have to hire a pro chef and a pro bartender. But the great thing is that I make enough money to pay for them, so I don't lose any money. But I don't really make a lot of money at that. It's not about that. It's about marketing the book.
And that's what they do, because it gives them kind of word of mouth, because they've got the book now. They can tell other people.
Building your platform.
Yes, building your platform.
Yes, as Mr. Oferman would say.
No, I'm trying to think.
You want to talk about rejection bingo? You want to talk about that?
Yeah, rejection bingo.
We do have time for that?
I'm sure.
If you're a smart writer, you're productive and you get a lot of material in the bag.
Yeah.
All right. So let's pretend I read a lot of short stories. I've published a lot of short stories, and it's one of the things I love to do. So I've got 10 or 12 short stories that I'm shopping. So when I get a rejection email, because you don't get notices, sometimes you get a letter. It's usually an email. But if you get a letter, all right, rejection bingo is this. You can't just say, I got a rejection letter. You got to score those rejection letters, because some matter more than others.
Yeah.
So your most basic rejection letter is a form. No one signs it, doesn't mention you or anything. Thank you for sending your story in. It's not what we're looking for at this time. And then a bunch of gobbledygook, the management. Yeah. All right? That's a 1.
Okay.
All right? Because first of all, they wrote you a letter. So at least they did hold the envelope in their hands.
Yeah.
So you did something. If you get a letter and your name is on that letter, and someone actually signed it with an ink pen, that's a little bit closer to publication, because there's a human being involved there. So that's a 2 right there. If you get a letter it's a form letter, and your name is on it, and they've signed it, and in the margin somebody writes, well done, good read, try again. All right? That's a 3, all right? Because that's serious. That's a response, right? Yeah. It's not just a rejection letter. They said try again. That matters.
Yeah.
If you get a letter where they actually say, hey, Mr. Pulfer, man, this was actually pretty good. We really like the characters. It's not working for our magazine at this time, but we think that if you shape this up a little bit, you have a really good chance of being published. Thanks. Joe Smith, editor, signed. No boilerplate, like an actual letter the guy wrote. That's a 5. All right. So you got to score your rejection letters, and you got to pay attention as you start getting more and more rejection letters, and you start working the story. This story right here, Johnny's favorite car, all right, that you're sending out. As you get rejection letters for that, you start realizing you're moving from a 1 towards a 5.
Yeah.
And when you start getting rejection letters that are all 5s, then your story's in good shape, and you're getting closer and closer to being published. As you get up to those 5s, then it's going to change, and you're going to get published. That's the way it works. When you start getting the 5s, then if you only get 1s from every magazine, there's something really wrong with that story, and you need to figure it out. But if you're getting personal responses in magazines going, man, we really love this, we wish we could publish this, it's just not for us. First of all, you shouldn't have sent it to them. That was the wrong place to send it. But secondly, that's the truth. That matters that they said that. And that's rejection notice bingo right there.
Yeah. And you have gotten 5s where people have written encouraging comments.
I got phone calls.
Oh, phone calls?
Yeah. A phone call is totally different. That takes it out of this. No longer bingo.
Yeah.
That's a relationship. And I got a phone call and I go, hey, listen, we cannot use the story you sent in, but holy crap, did we like it. And then they said, we think you should send it to these guys. Oh. And I'm like, really? And they go, yeah. And I'm like, okay, I didn't get published, but still. That was called Rattlesnake something out in Arizona, and they called me. And then they had me send it to another place, which was completely, I never got anything from them.
Yeah.
0 from them, So yeah, that's it.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea. I've heard of that, people getting rejection letters that have encouragement, but I didn't know if it was something people did or if they just all sent all the form letters like you were saying.
Well, it's starting to be now. It's more emails.
Yeah.
But there's a form email. There's the email you get immediately where it's like, we received your submission. Thank you very much. Yeah. But that doesn't count, And then you receive one like, we haven't made a decision yet. Well, that's not bad. So you got to figure out your own rating system.
Well, thank you very much, Bull.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. It was a pleasure. I love talking.
I didn't notice at all.
Yeah, you, Richard.